A heretic may see the truth and seek redemption. He may be forgiven his past and be absolved in death. A traitor can never be forgiven. A traitor can never find peace in this world or the next. There is nothing as wretched or as hated in all the world as a traitor. The Ordo Hereticus was founded much later in the Imperium and the Inquisition's history than the Ordo Xenos and the Ordo Malleus, which can both trace their origins back to an order given by the Emperor of Mankind to Malcador the Sigillite at the start of the Horus Heresy in the early 31st millennium. The Ordo Hereticus was created after the Age of Apostasy, which occurred during the 2nd century of the 36th millennium. The apostasy and the many heresies that took root during the anarchy of the Reign of Blood had severely destabilized the Imperium's political structure in a way not seen since the Horus Heresy millennia earlier. For the first few standard millennia of its existence, the Ordo Hereticus was but a rumor even to other inquisitors, so fanatically was its secrecy guarded. All this came to an end following the Age of Apostasy, when it was decided that the Order would serve better by casting an intimidating shadow, rather than existing as a myth too easily ignored. As the ecclesiarchy flourished, so too did the Ordo Hereticus grow with it. For nothing piques an inquisitor's suspicion more readily than a holy man claiming to speak with the Emperor's voice. Often, its agents pose as servants of the ecclesiarchy, feigning subservience to a cardinal's will until they have sufficient proof of the cleric's guilt. It is a rare priest with whom a member of the Ordo Hereticus cannot find fault. The Order was specifically formed to act as a check upon the power of the ecclesiarchy, ensuring that another man like the High Lord Gauge Vandar could not gain the level of power and control over the Imperium's massive governmental machinery that he did when he nearly usurped the Emperor's own rule and that of his surrogates among the Senatorum Imperialis by becoming both the master of the Adeptus Administratum and the ecclesiarch of the Adeptus Ministorum at the same time. Although the ecclesiarchy has its own internal regulatory bodies, it is still the role of the Inquisition to monitor all of the state organs of the Imperium. The ecclesiarchy must be particularly guarded, however, because of the extraordinary role that the faith of the Imperial Creed has come to play in the daily lives of the Imperium's people since the end of the Horus Heresy 10,000 standard years ago. Nothing can move the men and women of the Imperium like the power of their faith in the Emperor of Mankind. And there are many corrupt individuals like Gauge Vandar who would try and exploit this reality for their own selfish gain. Even worse are those who would pervert these honest expressions of faith into something darker and heretical, such as the creation of a new chaos cult that ultimately drives a planetary rebellion against the rule of the Emperor. The arrival of an Ordo Hereticus Inquisitor is met with as much trepidation as awe, since none know where their gimlet gaze may land, and upon whom their suspicions might fall. In addition to monitoring the ecclesiarchy, ensuring that wars of faith do not exceed their mandate, or that its many cardinals do not amass more power than is deemed appropriate. The Ordo Hereticus keeps a close eye on many other imperial organizations: the Adeptus Arbites, the Adeptus Astartes, the Adepta Sororitas, and also fellow members of the Inquisition. They monitor doctrinal and physical purity, and no one is beyond their jurisdiction. It is a brave man or woman who crosses the path of a witch hunter, as simply by opposing a member of the Ordo Hereticus, an individual may be damned and declared heretic and extremis diabolus. Burn them all. The Emperor will know his own. From Joachim Kais, at the Judgment on Xenos Prime. Although primarily concerned with monitoring the ecclesiarchy to prevent its clerics from subverting the Imperium's delicate political balance between all the different loci of imperial power, the Ordo Hereticus has expanded its jurisdiction to encompass the other threats to the Imperium of Man from within: witches, mutants, heretics, traitors, and other human deviants who would threaten the lives, or even worse, the souls of the Emperor's subjects. Hereticus Inquisitors are the most feared members of the Inquisition, as their focus is on mankind itself, and they are pitiless towards those they deem to have failed the Emperor or broken his trust. And under the fierce and unflinching gaze of Hereticus Inquisitor, there are few now alive who have not failed the master of mankind in some way, in either word or deed. The arrival of an Ordo Hereticus Inquisitor on a world is met with fear and awe, as no one but the Inquisitor himself knows where or upon whom their attentions will fall. However, many witch hunters, for all the awe and terror they deliberately inspire, know the value of secrecy and stealth in the execution of their duties. The Order employs a myriad of agents, investigators, informants, scholars, and infiltrators as acolytes for this purpose. The reasons for such tactics are simple. For a heresy to be purged, it must first be uncovered. The Ordo Hereticus can match the most labyrinthine plotters and secretive cults with dark machinations of their own, as many unsuspecting traitors and heretics have learned. Although the Order is extreme in its methods and utterly unforgiving in its persecutions, it has every cause and right to be so. The Imperium, though vast and seemingly invulnerable, faces the ever-present danger of a slow death by rot from within. This rot must be discovered and cut out. The eternal war of the Ordo Hereticus is one with no bystanders and no innocence. It is a war waged without pity or relent, not just to defend the status quo or enforce the Imperium's rule, but because the body and the soul of humanity itself is at stake. Their members monitor the wars of faith inspired and commanded by the ecclesiarchy to ensure they remain within the objectives assigned by the ecclesiarch and the other high lords of Terra. They ensure that the teachings preached by priests of the imperial cult remain true to the spirit of the Emperor's will. They regulate the wealth and stellar territory claimed by the higher-ranking members of the ecclesiarchy to prevent the princes of that institution its bishops and cardinals from gaining more temporal power than is appropriate, not wishing to see a repeat of the Reign of Blood. The Ordo Hereticus is also called upon to monitor other Imperial organizations for internal threats, including the Adeptus Arbites, the Space Marines, and even the other Ordo Majoris and Minoris of the Inquisition itself. Only the Emperor is beyond their jurisdiction or their suspicion, though attempts to root out perceived threats in the other Ordos of the Inquisition can be a difficult task at best. Now, what defines heresy? True heresy, as it concerns the Ordo Hereticus, is crudely defined as adhering to, promulgating, or acting on a theological or political doctrine contrary to the orthodoxy of the Adeptus Ministerum's Imperial Creed or the Lex Imperialis, which is itself considered of divine impute, being based upon the word and gift of the God Emperor. In practical terms, the crime of heresy covers a multitude of sins ranging from the denial of the Emperor's divinity and direct rebellion against the rule and rights of the Adeptus Terra to all manner of blasphemies and irreligious practice. In broader use, heresy, as expounded from the pulpit by imperial confessors, is coined as a pejorative term to define any crime, sin, or deviancy of thought that the Imperium's moral guardians find objectionable. However, the Imperium is a truly vast place, with countless variations of culture and doctrine, not all of which fit together comfortably. The extent of the fervor with which heresy in this sense is treated, and just what is considered heretical by the fanatics and extremists of a given world over another, can vary enormously. The fundamental nature of what it is to be human is under constant threat by the mutant and the psyker, corrupted in flesh. To the Ordo Hereticus, the mutant represents deviation from the physical norm and the potential taint of chaos. With mutation, it is commonly believed that spiritual corruption and depravity often follows as naturally as carrion draws vermin. Under the Lex Imperialis and the pronouncements of the Adeptus Ministerum's Imperial Creed, to be a mutant is to be removed from humanity. It is to be accursed and become the enemy simply by virtue of existing. Many mutants who are more rightly classed as abhuman because their bodies have been deformed by generations of industrial pollution or exposure to alien biospheres and are thus utterly blameless of warp taint, are still rendered suspect and are often the victims of the Zealot's wrath. However, more measured and reasoning factions within the Ordo Hereticus do see and make the distinction, preferring not to waste their time rounding up a few chemdregs when real chaos-corrupted deviants may be hiding behind a wealthy facade. These elements favor a pragmatic approach of brutal enforcement and vigilance. Others of a more Puritan mind favor the simpler solution of simply destroying them all, just to be safe. This latter course of action meets stiff resistance, and can make such inquisitors powerful enemies on worlds whose entire economies rely on an underclass of abhuman labor to survive and prosper. On the whole, and for the good of the wider Imperium, the pragmatist's approach of the control and repression of mutants usually wins out. However, when warp taint or rebellion rears its head, the powers of the Holy Ordos let slip the Emperor's hounds, and whole worlds may be heaped high with pyres as a result. The Witch, by comparison, poses a danger far greater than any other traitor or heretic, embodying a constant threat to the souls and lives of all those around them. Not only are such individuals potential avenues by which the horrors of the war may be unleashed on the unsuspecting mass of humanity, but their unrestrained and often untrained psychic powers make each and every one of them a potential planetary-level cataclysm waiting to happen. Each is capable of crimes and atrocities, by accident or design, unimaginable to the average citizen, from causing spontaneous fires and waves of nightmares, to the willful enslavement of others as living puppets, and the slaughter of innocents by no more than a stray thought. The persecution of the witch and the unsanctioned psyker is the central goal of many within the Ordo Hereticus, and it is a dangerous task indeed. It calls for the utmost guile, ruthlessness, and savvy, for few prey are more dangerous. Although the central tasks of the Ordo Hereticus are widely known, there are other, rarer kinds of crimes that also concern them. The veneration of false gods and forbidden laws that harken back to the sins of humanity's ancient past merit the direst enmity of the Ordo. Some are crimes so prescribed that even to know of them is enough to warrant summary execution. Others, such as the worship of the false godhead known as progress, and the pursuit of technologies and sciences prescribed since the time when the Emperor walked among his people, are treated with the same scorn and hatred as any mutant cult. The Ordo's involvement in such matters has brought it to conflict in the past with other powerful groups, such as the Adeptus Mechanicus and their counterparts among the Ordo Xenos, who might dispute both its involvement and its methods.